Five Nights at Freddy's. Fazbear Frights. Number 9. Story 1. The Puppet Carver. On stage, the banjo-strumming animatronic pig slowed in its movements, emitted a sputtering sound, and then ground to a halt. "Really? Another one?" Jack yelled. The stupid pig was the third animatronic to break in less than a month. And fixing those things cost money. Money that Jack didn't have. This place was bleeding him dry. When he bought it 3 years ago, he had thought that the pizza playground, a kiddie pizzeria complete with games and animatronics, would be a great investment. Pizza, games, talking and singing animal characters. Those are all things kids loved, right? And parents were always looking for ways to keep their little brats entertained, especially on their birthdays. He had anticipated a lot of birthday business. But the fact was, the kids weren't showing up, and Jack didn't know why. Was it because parents these days packed their kids' schedules so full of sports and lessons that there was no time left for mindless entertainment? Or did kids today just prefer mindless entertainment of a different sort on the computers or video game consoles? Whatever the reason, Jack was losing money like it was water pouring through a sieve. Just this morning, he had to order the kitchen staff to throw away expired ingredients for the pizzas nobody was going to eat. And now he had to figure out how to pay for repairs of the animatronics that nobody was going to see. "Porter! Sage! Get out here!" Jack yelled. He was so angry and stressed, he felt his face heating up. He remembered the doctor telling him to be mindful of his blood pressure. But how could you keep your blood pressure down when everything around you is falling out of control? Porter came out from behind the stage, and Sage emerged from the custodial closet. Both were in their early 20s, young enough to be Jack's sons. But these boys were no sons of his. What a couple of losers, Jack thought, as they shambled up to him like dogs, making a futile attempt to please their master. Well, Jack wasn't pleased with either one of them. Porter, the short one with glasses, was the handyman who was supposed to be in charge of the animatronics. He claimed to be some kind of inventor, and when he was not ineptly trying to follow Jack's orders, he was always tinkering with the tools and equipment in the storeroom. Sage, the tall one, who wore his long black hair in braids, was supposed to keep the place clean. He fancied himself a writer. He spent his break sitting at a table in the dining area, hunched over a notebook, scribbling away on his so-called novel. Clearly, neither of these idiots are going anywhere, Jack thought. They were lucky he saw fit to pay them minimum wage and let them take home leftover pizza. "The pig's busted," Jack said. "Take it back to storage." "Wow, these things are jumping like flies," Sage said, looking up at the almost empty stage. "I don't need your commentary, Captain Obvious," Jack said. "I just need your muscles to take the porker to the storage room." "Yes, sir," Sage said. But he looked like he was suppressing the urge to roll his eyes. Jack couldn't stand insubordination. "Well, soon all your animatronic problems will be solved anyway," Porter said, stepping up onto the stage to help move the broken figure. "I'm almost finished with the prototype of my machine. It will create low-cost but highly functional animatronics made from only an inexpensive slab of wood. You're going to be amazed, Jack." "I'll believe it when I see it," Jack muttered. Something about the little guy's ungrounded optimism was especially irritating. Porter grinned like he was being issued a particularly satisfying challenge. "Oh, you'll see it, and you'll believe it," he turned to Sage. "You ready to lift this thing? Let's do it on the count of 3. 1, 2... With Sage's help, Porter set down the deceased pig animatronic in a corner of the storage room. "I get so tired of the way that ogre talks to us," Porter said. "Once I get a patent on my invention and find a buyer, I'm going to be out of here so fast I'll leave a dust trail." "And I'll be stuck here eating your dust," Sage said with a sigh. "Maybe someday you'll take pity on me and invite me to your mansion and feed me a meal. You know, remember your old co-worker who's still living on leathery reheated pizza slices?" Porter gave Sage a pat on the shoulder. Hey, you won't need my pity. You'll get your novel published. Your book will be on the bestseller list. You'll tour the country doing signings. No more reheated pizza for you. Sage grinned shyly. You really think it's good enough to be published? Of course I do, Porter said. He was happy to give his buddy a pep talk, but it was an honest pep talk. Sage really was talented. It's way better than a lot of published books I've read. And it's not just me who thinks so. Your creative writing teacher says so too, right? Porter and Sage attended a local community college together, though they majored in radically different fields. Mechanical engineering for Porter, and English for Sage. Sage nodded. She's been very complimentary of it, yeah? Well, there you go. And actually, I've got to say, I found your work not just entertaining, but inspiring. My invention is partially inspired by your novel. Sage raised an eyebrow. How is that? Well, the Puppet Carver is about a wooden man who wants to be real, right? Sage nodded. Well, my Puppet Carver takes an ordinary piece of wood and transforms it into something that seems live. He hadn't heard Jack yelling, so he figured the grumpy boss must be temporarily distracted. Porter pulled back the glittery purple curtain that hid his invention, along with several broken animatronics. Come, check it out. If Jack comes back here, I'll pretend to be working on the animatronics, and you can pretend to be cleaning something. Sage smiled. You're a bad influence, Porter. He followed the shorter man behind the old curtain that had probably hung in front of the stage once. Here it is, Porter said, gesturing with a flourish to a clunky-looking piece of equipment. The Puppet Carver. It looks kind of like a giant wood chipper, Sage said. Well, that's the basic concept, Porter said in a salesman voice. But it does so much more. Like a wood chipper, the Puppet Carver had an opening where the wood was fed in. But what happened once the wood was inside the machine was far more sophisticated. Once he got a few of the kinks worked out, Porter planned to apply for a patent. He hoped that the Puppet Carver would be the first of many patented inventions. Here, help me load this log into it, and I'll show you what happens. Okay, Sage said, but he sounded a little unsure. This is a safe piece of equipment, right? The safest, Porter said. All the sharp parts are on the inside. The machine was a tall, vertical metal cylinder with a sliding door that was opened by pushing a button. When Porter pushed the button, the door slid open, revealing a human-sized compartment that was surrounded by metal blades. Together, Sage and Porter hefted a 5-foot cedar log and inserted it on its end inside the compartment. Porter pushed a button, and now we wait. The machine hummed to life, then grew louder and louder. It whirred, then sputtered, then roared. Is it supposed to be making all those sounds? Sage yelled over the noise. The mechanical noises were like music to Porter. He smiled. It's working perfectly. After less than a minute of noisy shaking, the machine grew quiet. Behold! Porter pointed to the inner compartment. Here's the best part. I'm beholding, Sage said, sounding like he wasn't sure what to think yet. Porter pushed the button and the door slid open, revealing a fully jointed wooden human-like figure. Now, I just have to give a gentle tug. Porter grabbed the wooden figure by its shoulders and pulled, then pulled harder. Sage laughed. It looks like you're helping the machine give birth. That's exactly what I'm doing, Porter said. He gave a mighty pull, and the figure inside the machine finally turned loose. Porter pulled it the rest of the way out, and then set it up on its feet. Porter knew that some people would describe the figure as crude, but to him it was beautiful. It was in the shape of a small man. The simple wooden figure reminded him of the drawing models they had used in his high school art class. Even though it was basic, it could still be extremely useful to someone like Grumpy Boss. Put the figure in a fuzzy suit to resemble a bunny or a fox or a bear, and you'll have a low-cost animatronic that would be perfect for the pizzeria. Okay, Sage said, smiling. I have to admit, that's pretty cool. Oh, you haven't even seen the cool part yet, Porter said. Just wait. He pushed a button on the wooden figure's lower back, and it slowly started to move. It turned its head to the left, then to the right. It lifted its arms, so it looked like it was reaching out for a hug. Whoa, Sage said, sounding amazed. You made this all by yourself? Porter laughed. Yep, all by myself like a big boy. It's incredibly cost efficient. If you can afford a log, you can make an animatronic. You know, I think Jack might actually be impressed by this, Sage said, walking in a circle around the animatronic and watching its movements. I hope so, Porter said, knowing that the boss wasn't easy to impress. It would be nice to get some respect around here, and maybe a little money too. No doubt, Sage said, but if you keep it up with the inventions, you won't be hanging around this dump for long anyway. You're on your way, man. So are you, Porter said. Sage had let him read the first few chapters of his novel, and Porter had been blown away by his friend's vivid language and imagination. I hope so, Sage said. I sure don't want to spend my best years in this place. Oh, Porter said, looking back at the puppet carver. I almost forgot an important step in this demonstration. He squatted down beside the machine. After the puppet comes out, you want to slide out the drawer at the bottom here. It's full of all the sawdust and splinters left over from the carving process. If you don't empty it out, the machine won't work right the next time you use it. He dumped the contents of the compartment into the trash can. Kind of like the lint filter on the dryer? Sage said. Exactly. Are there any people working in this place? Jack's booming voice yelled from the dining area. I've got tables that need wiping down, and it's stains that need setting up. Sage chucked Porter on the shoulder. I guess we're not quite ready for fame and fortune yet, huh? Porter laughed. Nope. Not when there are tables to be wiped and animatronics to be arranged. They headed for the dining area, prepared for a barrage of verbal abuse from Jack. It was a good thing they were prepared. So does anybody beside me work here? Jack yelled. His face was purple with rage. If Porter liked Jack more, he'd worry about his health. The guy's blood pressure must be through the roof. Sorry, sir. We were taking care of some stuff in the back. Well, people don't see the back. They see the front. And the front is a mess. The tables are dirty. You need to fix things up on the stage so it doesn't look like there are animatronics missing. That was actually what we were working on, sir. The animatronics, Porter said. Soon, all your problems with animatronics will be solved for a fraction of what you've been spending. Porter internally cringed to hear himself sounding like a TV infomercial, but his past experiences with Jack had told him that the man liked cheesy marketing speech. He thought it sounded smart. I won't hold my breath, Jack harumphed. Well, you won't have to. How about I let you see it on Friday morning before we open? Porter said. I think I should have all the bugs worked out by then. You better, Jack said, which Porter decided to take for Jack's version of a yes. So what are you standing around for? Get to work. Yes, sir. Sage grabbed a bucket of bleach water and a rag and started wiping down the tables. Porter climbed up on the stage and started fiddling with the animatronics. Jack got up from his table. I've got to take care of some things in the office, but I'll be back to check up on you. Yes, sir, Porter said, dragging an animatronic center stage. Once Jack was safely out of earshot, Porter muttered, Somebody must have spit in his oatmeal this morning. This morning and every morning, Sage said. Have you ever seen the man in a good mood? Porter rolled his eyes. Not once. I wonder if he ever is. Maybe when he's not at work. Do you think that's anything he does for fun? Sure, Sage said, looking up from the table he was wiping. He kicks puppies, rubs grandmothers, makes orphans cry. Porter laughed. We'd better be quiet or we'll get in trouble. Sage grinned. When aren't we in trouble? They worked quietly for a while. Once Porter had things working on the stage, he felt a strange presence in the room. The hair on the back of his neck prickled. He felt like he was being watched. He turned around and saw he had been right. A little girl around 4 years old was standing right at the edge of the stage. She looked up at Porter with big brown eyes. "Hi," she said. "Hi," Porter said. A few feet behind her, a man and a woman, presumably the little girl's parents. "Hi, folks," he added awkwardly. Customers had become such a rarity that it was always a surprise when they showed up. The little girl pointed at the animatronic bear. "Is that Baron Von Bear?" "Yep, that's the Baron," Porter said. Really, he should have had the curtain closed so that any kids who might show up wouldn't have seen the characters in that dormant state. "Is he gonna sing?" the little girl asked. "Yes," Porter said. "The first show's in 15 minutes. "Is there pizza?" "Of course there's pizza." Porter swiped a few menus from the host station and handed them to the family. "Why don't you folks sit at any table you want, and I'll go find you a server." Angie, the only server left in the place, was sitting in the kitchen doing her homework. She was studying to be a licensed practical nurse, she had told Porter, because his restaurant gig was obviously a dead end. Edwin, the cook, was playing on his phone. "Hey, Ange," Porter said. "You've got a table of customers." Angie looked up from her textbook. "Really? You mean I might actually earn a tip tonight?" Porter grinned. "It's looking like it. Don't spend it all in one place." "Hey, and I might actually get to cook something," Edwin said, pocketing his phone. "We need to use some of these ingredients. Half of them are about to go bad anyway." Angie was on her feet. "I won't share the information with my one table of customers." Edwin laughed. "Good idea." A few more families trickled in over the course of the evening, but business was still slow, and Porter spent most of the night trying to look busy so Jack wouldn't yell at him too much. The mood in the place was all wrong. A children's pizza emporium was supposed to be loud and lively and full of laughter. But the only thing you were likely to hear in this place were Jack's outbursts. It was always such a relief to walk out in the fresh night air after closing time. Porter, Sage, Angie, and Edwin left Jack and his anger inside, and instantly the mood was lighter. "Say, do you guys want to get something to eat?" Porter asked. He probably should save what little money he had, but he couldn't face the thought of bolting down another pot of instant ramen noodles in his apartment. There were murmurings of agreement. "What do you want?" Porter asked. "Not pizza!" Everybody yelled in chorus. It was a running joke. They ate so many leftover slices that they were all sick of them. But they kept on eating them because they were free. Actually paying to eat pizza, even good pizza, had become unimaginable. They ended up at the Golden Heifer even though none of them had enough money for burgers and had to settle for grilled cheese or BLTs instead. They shared an order of fries between the four of them, which the tired-looking waitress placed in the middle of the table. "Hey, you guys aren't looking for a cook, are you?" Edwin asked the waitress as she set down the ketchup bottle. "Not right now, hon," she said. "But if you want to fill out an application, we'll put it on file." "Thanks, I'll do that." Edwin flashed her a charming smile. After the waitress left, Edwin's smile faded. "I tell you what, guys, I'm pounding the pavement to find another job. If y'all want to keep on eating, you should start looking too." "You think Jack's going to fire us?" Angie asked, pouring out a puddle of ketchup on the fry plate. "Well, that's a possibility too," Edwin said, sipping his coffee. "But I think the place is going to close down before Jack has a chance to fire us. I've worked in the restaurant business a lot longer than you kids have. I can tell when a place isn't long for this world. It gets a stink of death on it. Are you sure that's not just the stink of pepperoni pasta's expiration date?" Sage asked. "Same difference," Edwin said, grabbing a french fry and dragging it through the shed puddle of ketchup. "If you were so long in that pepperoni, it wouldn't be going bad. And we wouldn't be in danger of being out of a job." "Wow, now I'm depressed," Andrew said, stirring her soda with a straw. "No need to get depressed," Edwin said. "You're at nursing school. You've got a good career ahead of you, and Porter and Serge are college boys.
I'm the only one at this table who's looking down a dead-end street. Well, maybe you're not, Porter said. I've just about finished my invention, which will bring the cost of animatronics way, way down. I'm showing it to Jack on Friday. If he doesn't have to keep replacing expensive animatronics, then he can pour his money into advertising and better food quality. Maybe even buy a few new games. Then customers will start coming again.
Well, I admire your optimism, Andrew said, popping a French fry into her mouth. I hope it pays off.
I think it actually might, Sage said. Porter showed it to me tonight. He's calling it the Puppet Carver because of my novel. It's pretty amazing. He grinned. The invention, I mean, not my novel. Though the novel's pretty amazing too.
Your confidence is inspiring, Edwin said.
He raised his soda glass. Let's toast to a brighter future.
To a brighter future, the friend said, clinking glasses. Porter and Sage shared a 2-bedroom basement apartment. From the window, they could see the spectacular view of people's feet walking on the sidewalk above. The apartment was dark and damp, with cheap paneling on the walls and ancient moss-colored carpet on the squeaky floor. The one thing you could say for it was that the rent was fairly cheap, especially with the two of them sharing it. Tonight was the same as every other night. They got home. Sage went to his room to work on his novel. Porter went to his room to work on designs for his inventions. Porter drew and measured and made notes, working until he was so tired he could no longer hold his eyes open. Then he would collapse into bed. Setting the alarm so he would wake up in time to get ready for the morning classes he took before returning to abusive pizza land, as he called it, in the afternoon. It was a grueling schedule that wore him to the bone, but he kept on pushing, sure that it was on his way to something better. Meanwhile, Sage returned to his manuscript, typing in the dim glow of his desk lamp until late in the night. From The Puppet Carver, a novel by Sage Brantley. Sylvester Pine emerged from the chamber as a perfect specimen. The first thing he saw were his hands, which were fully jointed. He watched himself curl them into fists, then straighten them back out and spread the fingers apart.
Remarkable, yes?
His creator said.
Sylvester nodded. Would you like to see more of yourself?
His creator asked. Sylvester nodded again. His creator smiled.
You are programmed with the power of language, both the ability to comprehend and the ability to speak. When I ask you a question, please answer it with a yes or a no. Now, would you like to see more of yourself?
Yes, Sylvester said. The words slipped from his lips effortlessly.
Good, his creator said.
Follow me. Sylvester let his creator lead him to a large piece of glass he somehow knew was called a mirror. Sylvester regarded himself. He was a complete person, with symmetrical facial features and eyes that opened and closed. When he wished to move an arm or leg, it moved according to his unspoken commands. He was not yet clothed, but when he was, he knew that he would strongly resemble a man with one exception. The surface of his face and body, unlike his creator's, was not soft and pliable because instead of flesh, he was made of smooth, solid wood.
You're a handsome fellow, his creator said, and a highly functional one. You can think, you can move, you can talk. You have 3 of the 5 senses regular humans have: sight, hearing, and smell.
What senses am I missing?
His creator shrugged. Nothing very important. You don't have a sense of taste because you have no need to eat, and you don't have a sense of touch because we haven't been able to perfect the technology yet. But this isn't a woolly bad thing. You'll have no ability to feel heat or cold, no ability to feel pain. In some ways, this lack makes you superior to those who have it.
Sylvester touched his left hand with his right hand. Then he reached out and touched his creator on the shoulder. His creator was right. Sylvester felt nothing. Before Jack entered the house, he took off his shoes. Becky forbade wearing shoes inside because they might scuff the beautiful new hardwood floors. Jack understood this. He knew how much the new flooring had cost. He had paid for it, but taking off his shoes and holding them in his hands still made him feel strangely sneaky, as though he were a thief trying to break into his own house. He walked into the newly remodeled home. The hardwood floors gleamed. The new living room furniture was sleek and modern, if not as comfortable as he would like. Becky loved to watch all those shows about redoing houses, and she had really put her heart and soul into making that comfy older house look elegant and new. But when Jack looked at his plush surroundings, all he could see was money flying out of his pockets. He found Becky at the kitchen table, reading a Home and Garden magazine and sipping a diet soda. Even though it was late, she was still dressed in a designer blouse and dress slacks, her hair and makeup perfectly in order. Ever since she got the house looking the way she wanted it, it was like she had to look a certain way too. No more lounging around in sweatpants. She had to match the decor. She looked up from a magazine.
You know, I've been thinking we might want to knock down the wall between the living room and dining room, she said. Have more of an open concept.
An open wallet's more like it, Jack said. My wallet. He stomped over to the refrigerator. New stainless steel and very expensive, and looked inside. What was the good of having a top-of-the-line refrigerator if there wasn't anything worth eating inside it? We never have anything good to eat in this house, Jack said. Becky rolled her eyes.
I had a fruit smoothie for dinner. I'd be happy to make you one, too.
That's not food, Jack growled. Food is something you can chew. Becky got up from the table and started selecting fruit from the fruit bowl.
Han, I know you'd love to eat a big, juicy steak every night, but the doctor says it's bad for your cholesterol and blood pressure. A fruit smoothie with protein powder is much healthier. And besides, it wouldn't hurt you to go down a pet size.
Jack's head was pounding with both hunger and anger. Nothing is ever good enough for you, is it? Everything always has to be improved. The house, your wardrobe, my waistline. Everything always has to be upgraded again and again. Becky was dropping blueberries into the blender.
Well, in the case of your waistline, it would be more of a downgrade that's needed.
She smiled at him. It was the same smile he used to find radiant, but paired with tonight's criticism, it was just annoying. That's not funny, Jack said. Stop making that smoothie. I don't want a smoothie. I'm going out for a hamburger.
But your cholesterol.
If I die from cholesterol, at least I'll die full and happy, Jack said. He stormed out of the house, then realized he'd forgotten his shoes and had to tiptoe back in to get them. It wasn't the dramatic exit he'd been hoping for. Jack pulled up to the drive-thru at the Golden Heifer. Thank you for choosing Golden Heifer. Order when you're ready, the voice on the speaker said. Give me the Mooinoink double bacon cheeseburger, a large fry, and a peanut butter shake, Jack said. That'll be $9.25. Please pull up to the window, the voice said. Jack shoved a 10 at the young cashier in the window and grabbed his order. He pulled into an empty parking space to eat his meal. When he unwrapped his burger, there was no bacon on it. Enraged, he got out of the car and stomped up to the drive-thru window, holding the burger in his hand as evidence. The cashier, a petite young woman with mousy brown hair, said,
I'm sorry, sir, but the drive-thru is for cars only. If you need to speak to someone, you need to go inside the restaurant.
I ordered the Mooinoink double bacon cheeseburger and left out the oink, Jack yelled. I am not going inside the restaurant. I am standing here until they make my order right. I demand bacon. The cashier, who was probably still in high school, looked nervous. Our company policy is no customs on foot at the drive-thru. I don't give a plug nickel for what your company's policy is. I am standing here until I get what I pay good money for.
So,
the cashier said with a quiver in her voice,
there was no bacon on your burger?
That's what I said, Jack thundered. Do you not speak English, or are you just an idiot?
I'm sorry you're frustrated, sir, the cashier said. I'm going to fix the problem for you. But you have to understand, I'm new at this job. Today is my first day.
And if you worked for me, it would be your last, Jack said. The young woman looked like she was near tears, which Jack found strangely satisfying. Once his order was finally corrected, Jack stomped back to his car and gobbled down the food like a starving dog. A smoothie was not dinner. He was a man, and men needed to eat. He knew he was consuming thousands of calories, but once the food was all gone, he still felt empty. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out the bank statement that had come earlier in the day. Jack had a master's degree in business and was an expert number cruncher. But no matter how he crunched them, these numbers were bad. It shouldn't be this way. Many years ago, when he was in college, Jack had envisioned himself on Wall Street as a real mover and shaker in the world of finance. When that hadn't panned out, he had gotten a job at a bank and started to move his way up the ranks. He worked there several years, and his career had been on the rise, until he had butted heads with his superiors and yelled at his subordinates one too many times and gotten himself fired. "You're great with numbers, Jack," his old boss had said, "but you're terrible with people." Hard to get along with, they had said. Authoritarian personality, they had said. Jack had figured that if he built his own business, he wouldn't have to be bossed around by anybody. When the pizza restaurant building had gone up for sale, he took the plunge. He knew that kind of restaurant had been a big hit in other cities, so he figured he couldn't fail. He was wrong. He frowned at the numbers on the bank statement. You didn't have to be an expert number cruncher to see that he owed more than he was earning. In Jack's pocket, his phone, the latest model, which Becky had bought him for his birthday with his money, rang. "Hi, Dad." It was Tyson, his son, calling from college. Jack felt his dark mood lift a bit as he thought back to Tyson's childhood, the ball games, and the birthday parties. Things had been happier then. "Hey, buddy, what's up?" Well, I just wanted to let you know that I had to use your credit card for a couple things today." Tyson's voice sounded tense. "One of my classes had an additional textbook I didn't know I needed." And then Tyson paused. That made Jack nervous. "And then?" Jack prompted. "I had a little oopsie with the card that ended up costing $900. I'm sorry, Dad." $900 is a big oopsie. A gigantic oopsie, in fact. Jack felt his face heat up with anger. "I know, Dad. I really am sorry. It was an emergency." "Sorry doesn't get me my $900 back, plus whatever exorbitant sum you had to spend for that useless textbook." His voice was growing louder and louder. "Tyson, you're supposed to be off at school, learning how to be an independent, learning to be a man. Well, how are you going to be an independent young man if you just reach for Daddy's credit card every time you have a supposed emergency?" "I thought that was what you gave it to me for. Emergencies," Tyson said. His voice had the trembling quality it got when he was upset. "Are you talking back to me?" Jack roared. "No, Dad. I'm just trying to understand." "Well, I'm trying to understand too," Jack interrupted him. "I'm trying to understand just how two people, the other one being your mother, though you don't need a college education to figure that one out, how just two people can be such an enormous drain on my finances." Jack hung up the phone before he could hear whatever sob story Tyson was about to tell him. Bleeding him dry. His business, his family were bleeding him dry. Why wouldn't they understand that he wasn't an endless source of money? They treated him like a human ATM. With a shaking hand, Jack opened the search engine screen on his phone and typed in the word bankruptcy. From the Puppet Carver, by Sage Brantley. "What are they?" Sylvester asked the little girl. In the cardboard box was a pile of small, squirming, furry creatures. The little girl giggled. "They're kittens. Have you ever seen kittens before?" Sylvester shook his head. "Really?" the little girl said. She picked up one of the creatures. It was orange and white and made a strange mewling sound. "They're baby cats. I named this one Daffodil. Do you want to pet her?" Sylvester reached out and gently stroked the tiny creature.
Isn't she soft? The little girl said. Yes, very soft, Sylvester answered. But the truth was, the kitten could have been as hard as a rock for all he knew. He could feel nothing. Sylvester, like all his wooden brethren, had been created perfectly to perform the manufacturing jobs that were required of them. But because he and his brethren could not truly feel anything, they were not real. Sylvester couldn't feel the softness of a kitten or the bright sun on his face. He couldn't feel the heat from a fireplace or a cool evening breeze. He couldn't feel the hugs of friendship or the kisses of love. Sylvester could walk and talk like a man, but he wasn't fooling anybody, least of all himself. A wooden man was no man at all. More than anything, Sylvester longed to be real. Today was the day. Porter had arrived at work early to set up the Puppet Carver on the stage. He'd even gone to the office supply store and gotten a flip chart so he could explain how the machine worked in an official-looking way. He wanted everything to be as professional as possible. It had to be, if he was going to save the restaurant and everybody's jobs. Sage helped him center the Puppet Carver on the stage. "You've really gone a lot, haven't you?" Sage said, looking at the flip chart, then at the uncharacteristic jacket and tie Porter was wearing. "Yep," Porter said. "I'm a nervous wreck too. I really needed this to go well. I feel like we all need it." "Yeah, but no pressure, right?" Sage said. "Even though our futures are all in your hands." Angie came in for a shift and looked up at the stage. "Hey, looking snazzy," she said to Porter. "Just trying to make a good impression," Porter said. He tugged at the uncomfortable tie. He had always thought it strange that hanging a strip of cloth from your neck was supposed to make you seem all businesslike and professional. Who decided that anyway? Angie flashed him a thumbs up. "Well, I for one am impressed." "Wait till you see how the machine work," Porter said. "Then you'll be really impressed." Jack stomped into the dining area, his face already set in a scowl. Clearly, he was in a terrible mood. But what else was new? "Oh, that's right," Jack said, looking up at Porter, who was on stage with his invention. "Today's the day you're going to waste my time with that contraption you made." "Sir, with all due respect, I don't think you'll find it a waste of time," Sage said. "When Porter showed it to me, I thought it was amazing." "Yeah, well, you're the one who's always working on that novel," Jack said, using exaggerated finger quotes. "Show me a fiction writer, and I'll show you a liar." Sage opened his mouth, but before he could put his foot in it, Porter jumped in. "Why don't we go ahead and get to the demonstration? Sage, can you get Edwin out of the kitchen? He wanted to see this too." Porter hoped having a small errand to run would distract Sage from the fact that Jack had just insulted him. Soon, Edwin, Angie, and Sage were sitting at the table nearest the stage, smiling and cheering Porter on. Jack sat at a table in the rear and leaned back with his arms crossed over his chest. "Okay," he said. "Impress me." "Yes, sir," Porter said. He tried to sound confident even though he was nervous. "Sage, can you give me a hand with this log?" Sage stepped up and helped him feed the large piece of wood into the machine's opening. "I'll got it from here. Thanks, buddy," Porter said, and Sage took his place back at the table. "Now, I just push this button and we watch the magic," Porter said. After he pushed the button, he stepped aside so everybody could have a clear view of the machine. Porter could tell right away that something was wrong. The machine was shaking too much and making a strange sputtering sound. There was an unfamiliar rattle from deep within its core. Porter caught Sage's eye and could tell that Sage knew too. Porter knew that he had correctly secured the log inside the compartment, but when he opened the door, the machine spat splinters and sawdust so forcefully that it sprayed from the stage into the dining area. Sage and Edwin and Angie were pelted with the stuff. Angie screamed and shielded her face. Edwin started sneezing. Sage ran up on the stage. "Maybe you should turn it off, man," he said. Porter realized he had been frozen in horror. He quickly touched the button, and the machine sputtered to a stop. He looked at the pile of shavings and sawdust in the compartment, and then, fearfully, he looked at Jack. Jack's face was a mask of rage. His lips were pressed together in a tight line. Porter knew that when those lips parted, whatever came out of them was going to be bad. It was. What came out first was not even words, but the roar of a lion furious to discover it has been caged. He pounded the table with his fists. Finally the words came. "You absolute idiot! Is this some kind of sick joke?" "No, sir," Porter said. He was shaking and sweating profusely. "Something must have malfunctioned this time. It was working great before. You can ask Sage." "Sage the liar?" Jack asked, his words dripping venom. No matter how terrified he was, Porter wasn't going to let Jack talk about his best friend like that. "Sir, Sage isn't—" "Don't argue with me!" Jack yelled. "You all seem to have forgotten who is in charge here." He stood up from the table. He looked at Porter, then at Angie, Sage, and Edwin in turn. The look on his face was one of sheer disgust. "I can't imagine there's a business owner in the world with a sorrier group of employees. Lazy, incompetent." He looked at the machine and the mess of shavings and sawdust. "Destructive. No wonder this business is in the toilet. I'll go down with my ship like a good captain should. But I know who's to blame for it. The crew. I've got half a mind to fire you all here now. But we open in 30 minutes. And look at this place. Clean it up, people." He stepped back to his office and slammed the door. "Jack sure is mixing his metaphors there," Sage said. "I'm confused. Are we on a ship or on a toilet?" Angie shook her head. "I don't know how you can joke at a time like this. We're all going to get fired." "Oh, I don't think he'll fire us," Edwin said. "He won't want to hire and train new people, not with the business going under. We'll just lose our jobs when the restaurant closes." "Is that supposed to be good news?" Angie asked. Porter sat down with his friends at the table. They were the saddest-looking bunch he had ever seen, and he couldn't help but feel it was all his fault. "I'm sorry," Porter said. "I don't know what happened, but I do know I let you all down." "It's okay," Sage said. "All inventors learn from trial and error. Today was the error part. There will be better days." Sage rose from his feet. "Let me go get some supplies to clean this up." Together, they swept the stage and wiped down the sawdust-covered tables. They used the giant wet-dried vac to suck up all the shavings off the carpet. Porter and Sage carried the failed machine back to its place in the storage room. Porter was desperate to look inside it and troubleshoot, but he knew that if he hoped to end this night still employed, he needed to focus on one thing: following Jack's orders to the letter. No matter how demanding or ridiculous they were, he and Porter returned to the stage and mopped up the dusty residue. By opening time, all evidence of the disaster was gone. Jack emerged from his office and surveyed the dining area. "See?" Porter said. "Spotless." "You can't even tell what happened." "It'll do," Jack said. He took 2 steps closer to Porter, so he was standing right in his face. "That dangerous piece of equipment you're responsible for could have destroyed my whole restaurant." He pointed his index finger at Porter. "You're fired. The rest of you, too. Get out, now!" "So you make us clean up like we're going to be opening, and then you fire us?" Sage said, confused and hurt. Jack grinned through his rage. "You see? Unlike you all, I'm not a fool. I knew if I had fired you, then asked you to clean up, this place would still be dirty." From the Puppet Carver, by Sage Brantley. Sylvester knew that he could feel now, because he had felt pain beyond imagining. After he had paid the fixer in money and promises he didn't look forward to keeping, the fixer had connected Sylvester to the machinery, and pain had shot through his body with the force of electricity as every new nerve, muscle, bone, and tendon in his body was shocked to life. The pain was so strong he seemed to be able to see it, even hear it, as its intensity drowned out the sounds of his own screams. But since Sylvester had paid the price in pain, now he could feel pleasure too. As he walked the city streets, he could feel fresh air in his new lungs. He crossed the street, went into the park, and touched the bark of a tree. Hard, rough. He stopped at an ice cream truck and bought a cone, just so he could touch his lips to its coldness. A lady walked by with a fluffy white dog on a leash. "Excuse me, could I please pet your dog?" Sylvester asked her. The lady smiled. "Sure, Sophie loves everybody." Sylvester knelt down and buried his newly sensate hands in the dog's fluffy coat. Tears sprang to his eyes. Now he knew what soft meant. "Thank you," Sylvester said to the dog's owner. The woman looked at him strangely. She said, "You're welcome," but quickly walked away. Sylvester looked down at his hands. They felt alive. For the first time since his creation, he felt alive. His hands itched and burned in desperation. All he could think about was what he wanted to touch next. Jack sat alone in his office, looking at the evening's few receipts. The only good thing about his situation was that he'd finally fired his idiot employees, so he could at least wallow in his misery in peace. He knew if he went home, Becky would want to talk to him about whatever new ways she had found to spend the money that they didn't have. He knew he should have a talk with Becky about finances, but he couldn't bring himself to do it yet. Becky had married him in part because he was a good catch, with a promising future. How could he tell her he hadn't made good on that promise? Would she even stay with him if the money ran out? This was a woman who grew up with a mother telling her, "It's just as easy to love a rich man as a poor man," and who had jokingly suggested that the words "papora" be struck from the wedding vows. Tick, tick. What was that noise? Jack didn't know if it had been going on a while without him noticing, or if it had just started. Either way, now that he had heard it, he couldn't stop hearing it. Tick, tick. It sounded like an especially loud watch, or a ticking time bomb. Had somebody planted a bomb in the restaurant? If they had, it was a blessing. Jack tried to turn his attention back to his bookkeeping, but the noise was too distracting. Tick, tick. It was more than distracting. It was maddening. What was that Edgar Allan Poe story Jack had read in high school, where the guy kills the old man and then is driven crazy by the non-stop beating sound of the old man's heart? It was like that. Tick, tick. The sound seemed to be coming from behind the stage. Maybe it had something to do with one of the animatronics. Well, there was no way to get any work done with this sound rattling around in his brain. He might as well try to find the source and see if he could make it stop. Tick, tick. The sound was louder when it was on the stage, so he was definitely getting warmer. He went backstage to the storage room. Tick, tick. The sound was much louder now. It seemed to be coming from the back of the room behind an old dusty curtain one of his idiot employees had hung up for some reason. He pulled back the curtain. Tick, tick. The sound was much louder now, unbearably loud. Jack clamped his hands over his ears. He looked at the disabled animatronics lined up like figures in a wax museum. They went where the noise was coming from. Tick, tick. It was coming from the contraption, the horrible mechanical abomination that Fool Porter had made. The ticking sound, clearly coming from deep inside the machine's bowels, was making it shake so hard it seemed in danger of falling over. Jack pushed the button on the outside, but nothing happened. He opened the door, and the sound grew so loud he was sure it could be heard from outside the building. Tick, 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 tick. There was some type of control panel inside the machine. Maybe if he just stepped in for a moment, he could find the right button to make the horrible ticking stop. He stepped inside. It was a tight space. Jack hated tight spaces. The door slid shut with a click. He reached out to open it, but there was no handle on the inside. He thought of banging on the door and yelling, but there was no one there to hear him. And even if there was no way he could be heard over the horrible ticking, which was now so loud it felt like it was coming from inside his own skull. But then the ticking was drowned out by the whirring of machinery. The contraption appeared to have turned on. He looked at the walls of the machine. They were lined with circular blades that had started to spin and were now extending from the walls toward his body. What was it that idiot had called the machine? The Puppet Carver? Jack's heart pounded in terror. He was going to be carved. There was no way to escape. All around him, the sharp metal blades reached toward his body, less than an inch from making contact with his arms, his legs, his face. This was it. He was going to die, and painfully. How long would it take, he wondered, for someone to find his body? No one would think to look for him here, not until there was a smell. Jack shut his eyes and prepared for the worst. Bang! He gasped, startled by the deafening noise. The loud bang was followed by a cloud of black smoke that filled the small space where Jack was trapped. There was a smell of ozone. He coughed and wondered if he would asphyxiate before the blades in the machine had time to shred him. Wait, the blades! The blade had stopped spinning. The machine was quiet. It must have malfunctioned in some way. The door slid open, releasing the smoke from the compartment. The machine made a sad sputtering noise, and then was still. Jack was alive! He couldn't believe it. He stepped out of the compartment like he was stepping into a new, better world. He looked himself over. No harm done. Not to him, anyway. The Puppet Carver might be broken beyond repair, but it hadn't really worked right in the first place. Jack felt himself smiling. When was the last time he smiled genuinely? He couldn't even remember. But now, back from the cliff's edge of death, there seemed to be so many reasons to smile. The problems that had consumed him before didn't seem as important. Money didn't matter that much. All that mattered was that he was alive. Jack walked out of the building. He looked up at the night sky. The stars sparkled, and the moon blanketed the world in a silver glow. It was so beautiful that tears sprang to his eyes. When was the last time he had really seen the moon and stars? When was the last time he had cried? Looking back at the last decade of his life, the only feelings he could remember were anger and fear. Anger at his employees, at his wife, at his son. Fear of losing money, power, status. What kind of a life was that? Well, that stopped now. It was a new day. Well, a new night anyway. He was going to be nicer to his wife, to his son, to his employees, to the random people he transacted with in day-to-day life. Jack felt his heart brimming with love and kindness. He was like Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, after his encounter with the ghosts. He was like Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol, after his encounter with the ghosts. No longer a mean old miser, but a man who could find the goodness in life, and people, and even within himself. Jack got in his car. How fortunate he was to have such a nice car. How fortunate he was to have a car at all. Many people were not so lucky. He started the car and headed toward home. He hoped Becky was still awake. He had a lot to say to her. "Oh," he said, as he drove by the Golden Heifer. He turned back to the restaurant and pulled into the drive-through line. When it was his turn, the voice on the intercom said, "Thank you for choosing Golden Heifer. Please order when you're ready." "Actually, I had a question to ask you," Jack said. "Yes?" the voice said. "Are you the young lady who was working the drive-thru Tuesday night?" he asked. Yes, sir." She sounded uncomfortable. "Good. I've got something I need to say to you. I'll just pull up to the window, okay?" Would you like to speak to the manager?" "No, my beef is with you." Jack laughed. "Get it? Beef? Because you sell hamburgers?" He couldn't tell if the drive-through worker thought this was funny or not. When he pulled up to the window, the young woman said, "Oh, you." "Yes, me," Jack said. "But I'm a very different me than I was last night. I wanted to apologize for my behavior. You were learning a new job, and you were doing your best and being very polite, and I was rude. I'm sorry." "Thank you," the young woman said, but her inflection rose as if she were asking a question. Clearly, she was finding this encounter puzzling. "Thank you," Jack said, "for your politeness and understanding." He sat there and smiled at her. "You're welcome." The young woman looked at the line of cars growing behind Jack's vehicle. "Did you want to order anything, sir?" she asked. "No, I'm good." He found himself chuckling. "I'm really, really good. You have a nice night now." "You too." Jack drove away, feeling the weight of one of his regrets lifting. But fixing one isolated incident, like a drive-through dust-up, was easy. With Becky, with Tyson, there were years of bad behavior on his part. Way more than he could fix with a simple "I'm sorry." An idea popped into Jack's head. Donuts. Donuts would be a start. Back when he and Becky had been young and broke, they used to meet for dates at the Donkey Doman, an all-night donut place near the coffee shop where Becky had been working at the time. Despite its stupid name, the Donkey Doman was the perfect place for a cheap date. The two of them would scrape up enough money for a donut each. Chocolate frosted for Becky and maple frosted for Jack, and 2 cups of coffee. The manager didn't mind that they only spent $5 and took up a booth for hours, talking and drinking cup after cup of coffee. Or if he did, he never said anything. That was back when he and Becky really talked to each other. Before the money, before parenthood, before all the stresses of responsible adult life. They talked earnestly about their dreams, their goals, their future. If Jack brought home donuts from the Donkey Doman, maybe it would remind her of those conversations. Maybe it would be the first step toward getting them talking again. There was no street parking near the donut shop, so Jack had to use the parking garage a block away. He wasn't thrilled by this fact. Really, the Donkey Doman wasn't in the safest neighborhood to be wandering at night. But he had become increasingly convinced that showing up with a bag of donuts might be the path back to Becky's heart. It was a thoughtful gesture, and it had been a long time since he had been thoughtful. Jack didn't like parking garages. There was something eerie about the flickering fluorescent lighting, and the way sounds echoed. The elevators always seemed to be on the verge of breaking, and were infested by foul and mysterious odors. Jack breathed a sigh of relief when the elevator doors opened. He hustled toward the garage's exit. At first, he heard only the sound of his own shuffling footsteps, but then he was sure he heard another pair of footsteps behind him. He casually glanced over his shoulder. There was no need to be afraid. He was probably just some regular person on a regular errand like he was. But Jack saw no one. He chalked up to the weird echo effect of the parking garage and walked through the exit onto the street. He walked past a dry cleaner's and an insurance office. Most of the businesses on the street were dark and locked up for the night, but in the distance he could see the light of the Donkey Doman sign with its smiling donut mascot. He heard the footsteps behind him again. He turned around but only saw a flash of movement as whoever it was ducked into an alley. Jack was pretty sure he was just being paranoid. After his near-death experience early in the day, it made sense that his nerves were on edge. He heard the steps again. They sounded wet, squishy, like somebody walking in galoshes in the rain. Jack started walking more quickly, and the steps sped up to match his. He was tempted to turn around and confront the person. But what good would that do if the person were armed? He broke into a run, though he knew he was too out of shape to run for long. The squishy steps behind him ran too. Suddenly, the donut shop seemed too far away to be a safe destination. He had to go inside somewhere to find a place with people and lights, a place where his pursuer would not follow him. He caught sight of an office building on the left, tried the door, and found it open. Once inside, he noticed that the door had a chain, which he quickly fastened. There was also a lock on the doorknob, which he turned. Feeling a little safer, he took a deep breath and turned around to survey the space where he found himself. There were no people, and the only light was from a single bare bulb overhead. The building looked abandoned. Graffiti had been spray-painted all over the walls. The glass in the windows had been smashed, and doors that had once led to offices had been torn off the hinges. He glanced inside one room to see a desk and a broken office chair and piles of garbage, probably from people who had been squatting in the space. Squatters. There was something else to fear, but the building was as silent as a mausoleum, and he seriously doubted that the potential mugger who had been following him would go to the trouble of trying to unlock the building's front door. For the time being, he was safe. He glanced back at the front door just to confirm that he had locked it and saw there was movement in the tiny crack between the bottom of the door and the floor. Something was oozing through the crack. It was some sort of glutinous substance, and its movement was slow and steady. It was pink, and it was a horrible pink, not the pink of cake frosting and party balloons. It was the pink of some living creature's insides. Jack took a step backward. He knew he needed to move more quickly, but he was transfixed by the sight of whatever was in front of him. Although it had the appearance of some sort of goo, it seemed to be moving under its own power. It wasn't an inanimate substance. It was alive. The sudden realization shook Jack out of his trance, and he ran down the hallway. He heard the squishy, sloppy steps behind him again, but he didn't turn around to look. He just kept running. At the end of the hall was a door marked Exit. He pushed on the door, but it wouldn't budge. Was it locked from the outside? Broken? He turned around. The thing, whatever it was getting closer. It was a pile of parts he couldn't make sense of. Much of it was somewhere between solid and liquid, but there were fully solid parts as well. Bundles of long, snake-like tubes, binny bags, and pouches. When Jack was a little boy, he had spent winter break at his grandparents' farm. He remembered watching his grandpa and uncle butcher a hog once. They had hung its body from a tree. His uncle had sliced down the hog's middle, and its guts had spilled out into a bucket with a sickening splat. This thing, that was how it sounded when it moved. Since he had no luck with the exit, Jack tried another nearby door. It was unlocked. He quickly opened it, darted in, and slammed and locked the door behind him. He was inside another ruined office. The floor was strewn with garbage, and the window was cracked, but strangely, a plaque still hung on the wall saying Employee of the Month. An empty bookshelf about the height of Jack's waist had been knocked onto the floor. Jack dragged it to the door and shoved it under the doorknob at an angle. Winded, Jack sat down in the chair behind the desk. Here he was, looking like the boss he had been for years, but in a ruined office, hiding in fear for his life. He should have known the locked door was useless. Long, slimy tendrils were already snaking their way through the cracks underneath it. Pink slime dripped around the sides of the door and pooled onto the floor, merging itself with the creeping tendrils. Jack looked to the window as a possible escape route, but more of the globby substance was slithering over the windowsill. Jack looked back at the door, where the thing continued to ooze out. Is there more than one thing? Or is it all the same thing? What is happening? There was a loud slapping sound, like someone trying to pull their feet out of deep mud. Rapidly, so fast, he couldn't even make sense of it, the mass of slime and solids reconstituted itself into an upright being that sat in the chair across the desk from Jack. The thing had approximations of arms and legs and a lumpy mound that stood in for a head. It was made of the translucent pink goo,
under which its organs were visible. Somehow, it reminded Jack of the awful gelatin salad his mom used to make, with canned fruit suspended under the slimy surface. It had no mouth or nose. But it had eyes, dark eyes that stared at Jack as though the thing could see into him the way he could see into it. What do you want? Jack asked, his voice trembling. He didn't want to die. Not when he had just had one near miss, not when he was just remembering what was important. The creature kept looking at him. Then, slowly, it raised one arm and reached toward him. Like elastic, its arm stretched, growing thinner as it reached across the length of the desk to touch Jack's face. Pain like Jack had never known shot through him. But it wasn't physical pain. He felt the pain of hurt, neglect, abuse. It was the pain of every employee he had ever yelled at or fired. The pain of his son every time he had missed one of his ball games or unfairly criticized him. The pain of his wife for every forgotten birthday or unkind word. Jack was filled with all the emotional pain he had ever caused, and was more intense than he could bear. He doubled over and squeezed his tear-filled eyes shut, sure he was about to die from a real broken heart. But then the pain left him just as suddenly as it had come, and he was awash in an overwhelming sense of relief. When he opened his eyes, the creature was gone. Becky was in bed, but awake, watching one of her shows about home remodeling on TV. "Hiya, Bex," Jack said, pleased to hear his old pet name for her come out of his mouth. He sat down on the bed next to her. "Can I talk to you for a few minutes?" "Sure." She aimed the remote and switched off the TV. "Is everything okay? You're not sick or anything, are you?" Her brow furrowed like it did when she was worried. "No, it's something like that." "Good. I mean, it's just been a really long time since you seemed like you wanted to talk to me. So I was afraid it was going to be something bad." "It is bad, but you've done nothing wrong. I wanted to say, I know I've been a bad husband lately, and I'm sorry." Lately didn't begin to cover it, he knew. He couldn't remember the last time he'd acted like a decent husband. Maybe when Tyson was little? Wow. There were tears in her eyes, which she wiped away. "I wasn't expecting that." "Well, from now on, you can expect better of me. You can demand better of me." He felt his eyes getting a little teary, too. "Part of the reason I've been so on edge is money. The business isn't doing well, Bex. The animatronics keep breaking. Families aren't showing up. I'm losing all this money on food. I don't know how much longer the pizza playground can limp along." Becky took his hand and held it. It had been a long time since she had done that. "Oh, honey, you should have told me. I'm here. And here I've been yammering away about remodeling and all this stuff that costs a lot of money. I never would have even suggested it if I'd known you've been worried about money. From now on, you've got to promise me to tell me when something's wrong." Jack nodded. "I will. I promise." "And I promise I'll do the same." She looked him in the eyes. "Actually, you know, I think the reason I've obsessed over the house so much is that I've been sad ever since Tyson left home. Fixing up things in the house distracted me from how much I miss him." "I miss him too," Jack said. "Nobody tells you how hard it's going to be when your kid goes off to college." Becky wiped another tear away. "They act like it's one big party, but it's not. Actually, I've been thinking I might go back to work. There's an opening at my old real estate office, and they called to ask if I was interested. I figured that way I could keep my mind active and see other people during the day." She squeezed his hand. "Plus, if I got a job, we'd have 2 incomes instead of 1. It might ease some of your financial worries." Jack tucked a lock of hair behind her ear. "If that's really what you want to do, then I support you." Back before Tyson was born, Becky had been a successful real estate agent. He had to admit that the thought of someone else in the family earning money was comforting. "It's really what I want to do," she smiled.
There's no need to be a stay-at-home mom when there's no kids staying at home anymore. It was either get a job or get a dog to turn into my surrogate child. I think you made the right choice, Jack said, smiling in return. Say, do you think Tyson's still up? He's not even 11, and he's a college student, Becky said. Of course he's still up. For him, the night is young. She snuggled down under the covers. But it's past my bedtime. Mine too, Jack agreed. But all the same, I wanted to give Tyson a call. Jack took his phone into the kitchen and poured himself a glass of water. Tyson answered on the first ring, but he sounded low. Hey, buddy, Jack said. I just wanted to check in to see how you're doing. I promise I haven't spent any more of your money, if that's what you want to know. No, I wasn't calling about money. I was calling about you. Really? Tyson's tone had a hard edge, because when we talked earlier this week, you wouldn't even let me tell you about the car emergency I had. You were too upset that I had charged your credit card $900 to make the repairs. Jack felt a little tug at his heart. Was what Tyson was saying true? Could Jack have really been so cold? I am sorry if that's how I seemed. You didn't have an accident, did you? No, but I could have easily. My car broke a belt on the interstate and just stopped dead. It was a miracle I didn't get hit. All these cars were just whizzing past me, and I was right in the center lane. Finally, a police officer helped me get the car moved to the side of the road and called a tow truck. I was really scared, Dad. His voice broke with emotion. Anybody would have been scared in that situation, son. Jack felt the full weight of guilt bearing down on him. I'm just glad you're okay. Did the mechanic get the car fixed okay? Yeah, it's running great now. Good. Jack knew that the mechanic had overcharged Tyson, taking advantage of the fact that Tyson was an inexperienced boy who didn't know what a fair price was. But the important thing was that Tyson was safe. You couldn't put a price on that. Listen, buddy, I'm going to let you go, Jack said. I'm sure you've got way more interesting things to do than to talk to your old man. If you need anything, let me know, okay? I love you, buddy. I love you too, Dad, Tyson said, sounding confused. As soon as Jack ended the call, he sipped his water and ate one of Becky's delicious homemade oatmeal cranberry pecan cookies. In the morning, he thought, he would make some phone calls. He would tell the kids he'd fired, because that's what they were, just kids, to come back to work as usual. He would make things right with them. Jack climbed the stairs, put on his pajamas, and brushed his teeth. He slid into the cool, clean sheets beside Becky, who was already asleep. As soon as Jack closed his eyes, so was he. It was a deep, peaceful rest. Porter didn't have much of an appetite, but he nibbled his toast and sipped his coffee. He couldn't face the 2 sunny-side-up eggs on his plate, and wasn't sure why he had ordered them, except out of habit. It felt like the eggs were staring at him, judgmentally. He knew that what was bothering him was the same thing that was bothering everybody else in that booth in the Golden Hemisphere, while they were having their traditional late Saturday morning breakfast. They had all received the call from Jack, all agreed to report back to work at the pizza playground, but they were fearful about what might happen when they got there. Angie was toying with her pancakes. So, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad a mood do you think Jack will be in today? An 11, definitely an 11, Sage said, picking at his fruit plate. I've got a job interview at that fancy new steakhouse on Monday, Edwin said. They're still hiring, I'm just saying. I don't think I'd ever get hired as a server someplace fancy, Angie said. I'm not ladylike enough, you know? She crammed a whole strip of bacon in her mouth, as if to illustrate her point. I'm doomed to sling pizzas at preschoolers. Yeah, I don't guess the fancy steakhouse has animatronics that need somebody to service, Porter threw in. Yeah, Sage said, laughing. But wouldn't it be weird if they did? There'd be all these rich adults eating steak and lobster and singing head, shoulders, knees, and toes, along with Baron Von Van and his friends. Edwin smiled at Sage and shook his head. You are weird, man, but they're hiring cleaning staff for the night shift. You ought to apply. Fancy places need their bathrooms cleaned just like regular places. That's encouraging to hear, Sage said. You know me, student at novelish by day, toilet scrubber by night. They paid their bill and walked together to the pizza playground with all the enthusiasm of condemned prisoners. When they reached the building, they saw the outside had been decorated with dozens of brightly colored balloons. A sign read, Special today, large cheese pizza, 4 drinks, for $10, includes 25 free game tokens. Porter couldn't imagine Jack ever voluntarily giving anything away for free. That's actually a pretty good deal, he said. Apparently other people thought so too. A family of 4 paused and looked at the sign. The dad reached into his wallet, pulled out a $10 bill, and said, Why not? The family went inside. Wow, Porter said. I feel almost hopeful. Sid wasn't as enthused. Be careful. Remember that Jack has given us plenty of reasons to be pessimistic. Porter had to admit that Sid was right. They entered the dining room. Jack was standing next to the table with the family, who had just come in, and was chatting with them as he filled their glasses and set the pitcher with the rest of the soda on the table. Porter was shocked to see Jack pleasantly interacting with, and actually waiting on, customers. Did you see that? Angie whispered to Porter and Sage. Since when does Jack hand out free refills without customers practically begging for them? Since now, apparently, Porter said. And look at his face. What is he doing? Sage was similarly in shock. I think he's smiling. Seeing Jack smile was like seeing a dog dancing on its hind legs. It wasn't physically possible, but it seemed highly unlikely. There's my cellar staff, Jack said, giving them a friendly wave. Edwin, would you be willing to go into the kitchen and make these fine folks one of your delicious pizzas? Sure, Edwin said, looking at Jack like he had just sprouted an extra head. Angie, Sage, Porter, how are you guys doing today? Jack said, grinning at them. It's getting close to final exams, isn't it? Are you studying hard? Porter looked over his equally confused friends. Yes, sir. That's good, Jack said. I'm proud of you. Thank you, sir. Jack grinned warmly at the trio, taking them aside. I do hope that all of you will accept my apologies for my behavior yesterday. I also hope you'll accept a $2 an hour raise. He gave Porter a chuck on the shoulder. And what's with all this sir stuff? There's no need for formality. This is Pizza Playground. We're here to have fun. Porter and Sage shared a look. In the past, Jack had always demanded that his employees call him Sir, as if he were their drill sergeant in boot camp. Another family of 4 came in, perhaps also lured by the $10 special. Welcome, welcome, Jack called, like an enthusiastic game show host. Who is ready for pizza games and a show? All the kids cheered while their parents smiled down at them. Angie seated the new family and took their drink orders. Porter went behind the stage to make sure that the animatronics and sound system were in good working order. On the other side of the curtain, he could hear children talking and laughing, the games in the arcade beeping and blipping. He wasn't sure what had caused the change, but whatever it was, Pizza Playground had started to feel like what it was supposed to. A place for families to have fun. A place where the employees helped create an atmosphere of entertainment and even enjoyed themselves in the process. But how could the place have felt so bad yesterday and feel the opposite today? How could Jack have fired the whole staff yesterday, then rehired them and showered them with kind words and a raise today? It didn't make any sense. Porter remembered something his mom used to say. When good luck happens, don't question it. It was sound advice. He programmed the show to start. He stepped backstage so he wouldn't be seen by the audience. The canned music started to play, and the sparkly red curtain parted to reveal the 2 patched together, barely moving animatronic figures, the bear and the weird bird thing, that now made up the house band. Even with just 2 performers on the stage, the kids in the audience screamed like rabid fans at a music festival. Porter chuckled. It was nice that they were enjoying the fruits of his labor. Later tonight, he thought, I should tinker around some more with the Puppet Carver and see if I can figure out what went wrong. Maybe if I can get it fixed, and if Jack's still in a good mood, he'll be willing to watch another demonstration. A successful one this time. The $10 special had been a success. Families had trickled in over the course of the night to take advantage of the cheap dinner offer, and business, though not booming, had been steady. Jack felt encouraged. No, he felt more than encouraged. He felt great. Tonight, as he looked around the restaurant, he saw not a doomed money pit, but a place full of possibilities. He just had to think harder about ways to bring people in, and tonight had been evidence that when he put his brain to use and tried something new, his efforts would be rewarded. Making the place a success was a challenge, but it was a challenge he could rise to. One reason he could rise to the challenge was because of his great employees, but in order to ensure their loyalty, he had to let them know that he appreciated them. Porter and Angie were wiping down the tables in the dining area, and Sage was mopping the floor. They were all such hard workers. He knew Edwin was working equally hard, cleaning up the kitchen. Once the money was rolling in better, Jack thought he should hire a dishwasher to help Edwin out in the kitchen. When business was booming, and Jack felt sure that it would be soon, one guy in the kitchen wouldn't be enough. "Hey, are you guys doing anything special after you get out of here?" Jack asked. Angie looked at Porter and Sage, who shrugged. "Just studying, probably." "Well, if you guys can stick around for a little bit longer after closing, I thought I might order some Chinese takeout. My treat. No need to study on an empty stomach, right?" Angie smiled wearily. "Sure, Jack. Thanks." It was strange. When Jack was kind to them, they seemed suspicious, like they didn't trust him, like there had to be a catch. Well, he was just going to have to work harder to earn that trust. Jack sat crowded around a table with Porter, Sage, Angie, and Edwin. They passed around little white boxes containing rice, lo mein, Mongolian beef, and Mugu Gai pan. "This was really nice of you, Jack," Angie said, messily picking up some noodles with her chopsticks. "It sure beats leftover pizza," Edwin added. "That's the truth," Porter said. "No offense to your pizza cooking skills, Edwin." Edwin smiled. "None taken. I probably get sicker of it than the rest of you since I'm cooking it and eating it." "You've been real nice all day today," Sage said. He looked at Jack with a strange intensity. "It's like you're a new man." Jack smiled, happy to be at a table full of happy people, sharing good food. It felt like a holiday, a celebration. It was the way things should be. He wasn't sure why things felt so different, so much better, but they did. Jack really was a new man. From the Puppet Carver by Sage Bentley. Sylvester held his newborn daughter in his arms. With one hand, he touched her impossibly soft cheek. His eyes filled with tears at the same time his lips spread into a smile. This, he thought, this was what it meant to be human. The end. Sage couldn't believe it. The novel was finished. As he walked backstage to the storage room, he read and reread the novel's last line, smiling to himself. Sage would never admit it to anyone, but he was so moved by the beauty of his novel that there were tears in his eyes. It had taken him so many long nights of writing and rewriting, of sacrificing sleep and time with friends. Finally, he was completely satisfied with his work and hoped that soon a publisher would be too. And then it would be goodbye Pizza Playground and hello, bestseller novel. He laughed out loud. He knew he was being ridiculously optimistic. But why not? It could happen. He just needed to do a favor for a friend, and then he could go home to celebrate. Sage pulled back the glittery purple curtain. There it was. the Puppet Carver, named in honor of his novel. Porter had told Sage he was going to have to go back to the drawing board and develop what would hopefully be a more effective Puppet Carver 2.0. The old machine would have to be scrapped, but Porter said he didn't have the heart to do it himself. Sage had promised that he would take care of it. Sage wrestled with the machine, trying to figure out the best way to get it outside to the dumpster. As he tugged on it, he became aware of a slight sloshing sound. And then there was a smell, a rotting, fetid smell that made him gag. It seemed to be coming from the bottom of the machine. Maybe a rat had crawled in there and died or something. Sage kneeled in front of the Puppet Carver so he could reach the drawer at the bottom that served as a reservoir for all the waste generated during the carving process. "Here we go," he muttered as he prepared for the source of the smell. When he pulled out the drawer, the smell was so strong that his nose was assaulted. The sight was even worse than the smell. Slimy pink entrails and mangled organs. Was that a kidney or a piece of liver? Not the organs of a rat, but of a much larger creature, human size. Sage had no idea what could have happened here, but it was all the more reason to get the whole thing to the dumpster as fast as possible. Holding his breath, he dumped the contents of the drawer in a garbage bag. They landed with a wet splat. He threw the bag in the dumpster and walked away, ready to put his days at the pizza playground behind him. And that is the end of Story 1. Thank you for listening to this read-through of Five Nights at Freddy's, Fazbear Frights, number 9, Story 1, The Puppet Carver. I really hope you enjoyed listening to it. If you did, please hit that like button. And if you were new to this channel, why not subscribe to get the next story in this novel? Also, make sure to click that bell icon so you'll be notified the next time I post a story. And I'll be back next time with the next story.